It's been a while. All right, let's go.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Twins Off Daily podcast brought to you by twinsdaily.com. How the heck are you, Twins territory? It has been a minute since you have had access to one of our off-season shows. Obviously, we are doing one every single day. If you need access to our Patreon, you can direct message Greg T. Masterson, and he will find a way to exchange that with you for a price. So get ready for that. I'm gathered here today. I'm your host, Sweet Lou Hennessy. I'm here with three of Twins Daily's finest as we talk about the dead of winter. Oh, it's been kind of a topsy-turvy little trip we've gone on down here. So, Greg T. Masterson, what do you think? How are you, my friend?
I'm doing really well. I'm going to be doing even better next Monday night when my Rams take on the Vikings in the first round of the NFL playoffs. And I get to go into Super Saiyan troll mode on Twitter. I am so excited.
Doesn't sound like you. Trolling? I don't know. That's foreign territory for you, dude. I don't know. But anyway, we're glad to have you here. Let's move on down to Cody Schoenman. What's going on, the Schoen?
So, throughout this whole entire offseason, I've said, this podcast is famously pro Rams and pro Vikings. I've said that multiple times. That came back to bite me very hard, this podcast. I think Tom's a Vikings fan. I know Lou, I know you are. So this podcast is now pro Vikings and not pro Rams based off majority. I know you guys can't see Greg, obviously, but he was wearing a Rams jersey before we got on. It kind of looked like a St. Louis Rams jersey, actually. Was it St. Louis, Greg?
No, it's Los Angeles, but it was right after they moved to Los Angeles. Really quick, they went through this weird phase where they didn't have the rights to update their jerseys, but they could update their helmets and their pants. And so they really wanted to go to a classic, just navy and white configuration. They only wore white jerseys after that because they still had to wear their St. Louis Rams jerseys. And so the Blues had a lot of gold on it and they didn't like that. So they went all white all the time that only has a little bit of the gold trim. And so this is technically a Los Angeles Rams jersey. It's an Ndamukong Suh Rams jersey. Oh. So I might be the only person in the world who has that.
Class act, Ndamukong Suh. We are also gathered here with our good friend, Tom Froemming. What's going on, TFT?
Not a lot. How are you guys doing? Happy New Year, 2025.
Yes, we made it finally.
Or 2020 part 5, whatever you want to call it. Yeah,
that might be a good way of putting it. Anyway, we are so glad to have him here. He's going to give us the goods, as is Greg, as is Cody, and let's get rolling here. Before we jump into the action, let's talk about our walk-off question. So we are recording this on Tuesday night. And this is about an hour and a half after Dan Hayes' report came out saying that the Twins might possibly have a buyer by opening day ? Unbelievable that things could move this fast in this development. So with that in mind, our walk-off question today is, what local connection, rich person would you want to bid on the Minnesota Twins to be their new owner? There's a lot of good choices here. Minnesota obviously known for a bunch of super rich people who love baseball, so I think there are options aplenty. So we will keep that in mind for the rest of this episode. Listeners, I hope you do too, and let us know if we missed anybody, but we will try to answer that at the end. Okay. So, like I said before, we are going to talk about the dead of winter, which the Twins seem to find themselves in most Januaries. It feels pretty much like this happens many a year, but I don't know. Is it just me? Does this winter feel colder? I don't know. Your thoughts, Greg, what do you think?
I mean, it is. I mean, we've passed the magic date of the Josh Staumont signing. It was at December 27th. I believe was the longest that in recent memory that the Twins have gone without making an MLB free agent signing. Obviously, they did make one trade for Mickey Gasper, which is technically an MLB trade. Technically, Giovanni Moran is an MLB, a former MLB. I think you'd call that an MLB for MLB trade. I don't know. It is, but it has been a really cold winter, and I don't know what you guys kind of expected out of this offseason with, the all the questions around spending and all of those things, and so much of the roster kind of already being in place. But I'm a little surprised that we haven't at least gotten a $1 or $2 million signing but also that money probably would have gone to a Josh Daumont type, and there's no room for a Josh Daumont. I don't know, man. I really don't know what the good answer to this question is.
I love you bringing up that date, December 27th. I'm going to call that the Staumont solstice. That is going to be the new date marker that we have for the off season. We have passed the Staumont solstice, and we are just waiting for the Justin Turner equinox. I don't know what the next signing is going to be. So, Cody, Tom, what do you guys think? Is it just me? I feel like this winter has just been a little lazier, a little colder, but just with all the constraints we find ourselves in.
Well, I think it was last offseason I coined the phrase Chez Falvey doesn't open until January. And I'm sticking with that. I figured, I'm completely honest, it's probably something I shouldn't admit on a podcast where I'm supposed to analyze things, but I, to this day, have not barely looked at the free agent. My expectation coming in that it was going to be incredibly quiet and that they probably aren't going to spend a dime until that payroll space is opened up.
Sure.
So even if they are very confident at this point in time that maybe they'll trade Chris Paddack, maybe they'll trade Christian Vasquez. I don't even want to mention some of the other names that have been out there. I'm not going to say the other ones. Okay?
Say it. Say Willie Castro, Tom.
No. Foot down. But my expectation is I really don't think they're going to sign anybody until that space is open. That's not based on anything. That's not based on any reporting. That's not based on anything I hear. That's just sort of a hunch I've had coming in. So it has definitely been quiet. Like the Kyle Hart, the Twins were rumored to have interest in Kyle Hart, who is a left-hander coming out of the back from the KBO. And I believe that was the first actual rumor. Yes, there was a trade with Boston, but I think that was the first time the Twins were tangibly connected to a free agent this offseason. I'm working as hard as I can to get Roki Sasaki to Minnesota.
Yeah.
I don't know what these other guys are doing, but I'm working my tail off on that over here.
Tom absolutely is. He is leading that charge of recruiting Roki Sasaki, the Japanese phenom, 23 years old, I think, right? To come to the Minnesota Twins. If he does, Tom deserves a signing bonus. So he is doing his part. You brought up Kyle Hart. Cody, you recently wrote about the young left-hander, right? What can you tell us? Should Twins fans be excited? I mean, obviously not as a headlining move, but could it still be valuable nonetheless?
Well, do you think 32 is young? I guess I'll throw that question.
Hey, I do.
32. It's been like 432 since I was 32. So
that's true. Well, yeah, I mean, I do genuinely think Hart is intriguing. I think the question lies in what role would you play with the Twins? I mean, so if you look at their rotation, obviously there's Pablo, Ryan, and then Ober. I mean, you have Paddack right now. He's likely gone. So in the back the three options for the 4 and 5 slot are Woods, Richardson, Festa, and Zebby. So, I mean, if you bring Hart in here, I could see him fitting in towards the end of the rotation. Like he's somebody who could take Paddack's spot for about $5 million less, maybe $4 million less. I'm sure he'll get roughly $3 to $4 million in a contract. So it would be a cheaper back of the rotation option. And it would actually be a lefty. I mean, the Twins haven't had that since Dallas Keuchel, and that was for 7 starts, and they were mostly ineffective. I mean, it's not really anything there. So then you have to look at it from the lens of the bullpen too. If you look at the depth, it's Funderburk and Brent Hedrick for left-hand relievers, and it's like that is very thin. I really do not like going into a season with that. And I know on the Athletic report, it was from Will Salmon and Katie Wu. They mentioned that teams were looking at Hart as a reliever. And I think the Twins, if I had to speculate, I think they would view him more as a reliever or even like a stretch reliever right now, more than the starter. I know also the Brewers, the Orioles. I mean, they just signed Charlie Morton, so maybe not them anymore. But like the Yankees are also involved. Like I feel like Kyle Hart is like the perfect Brewers guy. Like he would go there, he would throw like 170 innings. He'd have like a 4.1 ERA. He'd be like Colin Ray, but lefty. But I'm kind of getting off track now. But I mean, either way, I think Hart would be a really good addition in a normal offseason. It's just like you're so salary strapped. Is $4 million even doable right now? Because I don't foresee them trading Vasquez or Paddack or Castro before they can sign Hart. Because I think Hart will be off the board by at least by the Winter Meltdown probably, which is later this month. So I mean I like him. There's question as to whether the Twins would put him in the rotation or the bullpen. I personally would prefer the rotation, but we don't really know. Like there's a lot of questions. Like even if you do pick him up, like what would he be? Is kind of where I'm at right now with him.
Fair enough. Like you said, like we talked about before, that's kind of been the extent of the rumors mostly for the Twins, I feel like. But are there any other names that are kind of in that Kyle Hart territory that we think that, we could see them really being a Twins type that they would bring on and try to develop or anything like that? Do you three have any names that kind of come to mind like that could bring up any sort of little bit of excitement at a reasonable cost? It's tough to think of too many right now, especially when it comes to the pitching side. I don't know. Like I talked about before, Justin Turner is kind of the last remaining, you could call him semi-first baseman, right? He played a good amount of first, but mostly DH with Toronto and Seattle last year. I personally love him. He's one of my favorite players of the last 10, 15 years or so. But at the same time, Father Time is kind of creeping up on him a little bit. What would we think about somebody like Justin Turner or somebody in that kind of category?
Somebody pretty similar to Turner, but has more versatility is Mark Hanna. And I've been intrigued by the idea of bringing in Mark Hanna because he can still play left field. I don't think he's a right fielder at this point due to his arm, but left field, first base, DH. I think he's a really, fascinating guy who could be brought in, could play multiple positions, could be DH against left-handed starting pitching. I think his splits are pretty good against opposite-handed pitching. So he's a name I've been intrigued into. I know recently Matt Trueblood wrote about James McCann. He's a backup catcher. So if the Twins were to trade Vasquez, I would love to have McCann come in to be Jeffers' backup. I mean, you could still honestly run the same platoon. Like you could have it be 50-50 if you want to. I mean, I think McCann is that good of a catcher. I mean, the bar is low offensively, but he is still a really good defensive catcher. And Jeffers needs somebody like that who can complement him because we're all aware of Jeffers' ceiling as an offensive catcher, but he still struggles with throwing guys out at second and even with framing too. So, I mean, I think Canna and McCann are some guys that I like the idea of bringing in, but again, it's just money. Where is it?
Yeah. No, those are good names to keep track of for sure. I guess I wasn't aware of this. Is Mark Canna a registered noodle arm? Is he a noodle?
Yeah, I don't think he's got much juice there, especially on the Wallner scale. He's probably noodle if that's what we're going on for a right fielder.
Sure.
But just to throw out some of the other first baseman still available. Turner's definitely sort of the marquee guy there still available. A couple old friends, Donovan Solano and Joey Gallo, are listed among the next best ones. Connor Joe, Anthony Rizzo, Ty France. There's not a lot there. Yeah.
I've got a friend who's steadfast convinced that Ty France is going to be the guy for the Twins. He said he's willing to catch. So if the Twins need two emergency catchers on the team, now that they no longer have Farmer and Carlos Santana, if they need two other guys who can step back there, I guess that's the play. I just wrote something at Twins Daily. Fangraphs came out with their projections for the year. And they identified first base, DH, and left field as kind of the Twins' lowest positions other than catcher, but catcher's kind of whatever's going to happen at catcher is going to happen at catcher. And so I actually wrote something about hey, maybe we don't just need to be looking around at first baseman. Maybe it's sort of like an any bat will do type of thing. One of the names that came up when I was doing that is like potentially like Jesse Winker, I think is probably going to get the same type of money as a Justin Turner. I think it's going to be like in the same neighborhood. You're probably going to see more money going to Winker, but no, I don't think it's significantly more money. If we want to expand to just anybody who can play, left field, first base, or DH, because there's going to be a rotation there. The Twins have to do something to get Eddie Julian out of like guaranteed penciled into the DH spot on opening day, right? Like there has to be something else there by the end of the offseason so that it's not just Eddie Julian is going to be your DH for April, May, whatever. So I don't know. It's not somebody I've like dug super deep into, but I think Jesse Winker could potentially be an option there. I also have been fixated on Yasmani Grandal over the last few months. I know that some people don't really enjoy that one. But if you're going to be moving Christian Vasquez and you're looking for a glove first catcher, like Grandal is kind of the platonic ideal of that guy. So I don't know, man.
Yeah. Greg, I'm trying to think. Is there any like I don't
know what
big hulking right-handed first baseman that could be had at like a minor league deal or something?
Yeah, maybe. Should the Twins sign Miguel Sano?
Oh, there it is.
He's a free agent, isn't he?
He is a free agent, and I think he's going to be a free agent for a few years.
You think?
Every year.
I don't know. I wonder if Miguel Sano is going to latch on somewhere on a minor league deal. Did he get a guaranteed deal from the Angels, or was that a minor league deal?
It was a minor league deal.
Minor league, and then he just made the opening day roster.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then he sat on a hot pad for too long and burnt himself and went on the eternal
the most Miguel Sano injury you could ever imagine. Shows up at a new place and just burns himself on the training equipment.
Oh man, we miss him. I miss him. I miss talking about him as if we don't talk about him every single episode.
Would we really be a Twins podcast if we didn't dig up the corpse of Miguel Sano's playing days and rehash old arguments?
Yep. No, hey, here's the thing though, too. The Twins, they don't need to just look at free agents in terms of, getting somebody cost effective onto their roster. What about a trade? What about trading for somebody who's, I don't know, maybe still on their, rookie contract or, their cheaper pre-arb years? They have some pretty good prospect capital that they could dangle out there in order to get one of these young players who are still under pretty easy cost control. Anybody spring to mind right off the bat? Let me start you off with a prime trade target around the league, and that is Tristan Casas from the Boston Red Sox. I think he has parts of 3 seasons in the major leagues here, but it all adds up to just over 700 plate appearances or something like that. And he's got like 30 home runs already. He's got some pretty stellar power, to say nothing of any of the wrinkles in his game. What would you guys think of someone like Casas?
Didn't the reports say that they're looking? Sorry, Tom. I'm just going to say they're looking for like big league pitching for Casas.
Mm-hmm.
I've
seen a lot of Luis Castillo for Tristan Casas like mock trades. So if it was the Twins, that'd be like Pablo Lopez for Tristan Casas. I know Casas is already he's like pretty ingrained in the Boston lineup. Like he's projected to be like the 4-hole hitter this year. So I mean, Boston has money. So maybe if it was trade Casas to Minnesota for Lopez and then they sign Pete Alonso. That could be something big they could do, but I feel like Boston is pretty it's either Casas or somebody like Castillo or Lopez. So we have to get rid of Lopez is what I would guess. But I know Tom was going to talk first, so
yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I like the flow of both these conversations we're having because they're hitting on a couple of different talking points that I think a lot of Twins fans aren't really considering right now. One being that, yes, there are some holes in this roster, but they're not gaping holes. You could just roll with Jose Miranda at first base and, whatever else you have. There's going to be guys coming up from the minor leagues and contributing to the Twins too. Don't forget about that either. We're going to see Emmanuel Rodriguez.
Right.
And maybe not that long into the season. So this is, and then if you were to let's say if someone said, hey, you're going to have a need on your team, what do you want it to be? Your first answers are going to be like left-handed bullpen, DH, first base, and left field. Like their issues right now are the issues you want to have. And what they have pretty well shored up are the things you want pretty well shored up. It's a good situation to be in. First base, definitely a situation where there's not really an obvious person there, even though I am a Miranda guy. I'm a believer in him. He's just never looked that comfortable at first, which hurts.
Right.
And I've been kind of one of those people who would say first base, that's lower on the defensive spectrum. It's not that important. But it's really hard to say that after watching Carlos Santana last year. They are involved in so many plays, and obviously there's a little bit less maybe overall athleticism required to be there, but a good first baseman can save you so many outs. That's not a throwaway position or anything. The Twins are also in a very good position to potentially trade, from their system. One of the, and it's not just the minor league system. They've also have a bunch of guys on the big league club established who are going to be on the team for a very long time. They're not free agents the Twins are losing next to nothing next off season. I think it's like Willie Castro and a reliever.
I can't believe you just said that Willie Castro is next to nothing. Tom, what's happened?
Those were two different points that I was making. But that you anytime you say Willie Castro, it's like mentioning the name of a beautiful woman to me. And my train of thought is just, what was I saying?
He's been visibly flustered for 20 seconds now.
Yeah. I just have a highlight reel that plays in my head when I hear it. But yeah, if they choose to, I'm a prospects guy. I watch all the guys in the minor league, so it hurts to see them trade from that pool, and they have not been particularly successful when they've done that. A lot of those deals have come back to bite them in some ways, but that is definitely, and maybe it's not Cassis, maybe it's somebody else, but that's definitely an avenue that the Twins have in front of them that potentially might not cost them the money that they don't have.
Right.
They might have to get creative, but that is a potential outlet. It's so much more difficult to sit here and analyze the trade market though than it is to just look at and say, oh, Justin Turner is all that's left. Well, that's not true at all.
Yeah. It's far more, just real quick, Greg. It's so, so much more complex than maybe us at this level can really interpret at this time, not being in a front office. They could feel completely different than so many of the different rankings that we take as gospel. You know what I mean? So you're right. It's definitely trickier than it comes across on the surface. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah. And kind of on that same point, Lou, it's like there are a handful of names that everybody knows is going to are actively being shopped. Like Lamont Wade is actively being shopped. Lowe or is it Lau? I can't remember which one. And Diaz in Tampa Bay are being actively shopped this offseason, all that. But when you're talking about the class of guys who are a year or two into the big, that's 80% of the league is under that umbrella. And so it's really difficult to determine, which team is lower on their own guy or which team feels like they might, some guy who's got 2 years under his belt is about to get pushed out by a rookie or whatever. It's so off the wall. But I will say, at the beginning of the offseason, one of my long-term takes is that the Twins are going to trade for some pre-arb guy that has a little bit of staying power behind his name. It's going to hurt in prospects, but that's what they need to do. That you don't get big league talent for under $1 million unless you're trading for one of those guys. Spencer Torkelson might be a name, depending on. A handful of years ago, every single team was huge on Spencer Torkelson. He was a unanimous 1-1 guy in the draft as a first baseman. I think he got announced as a third baseman as a favor to him, a vote of confidence. And I don't know how long that lasted. But if you've got a dude who's a unanimous across the industry, everybody's saying this dude is 1-1. Also, he's a first base only guy. Everybody loves that. Everybody loves that guy. And so who knows, maybe the Twins are still high on him. He is very much a candidate for getting moved after the Torres signing, and Colt Keith is moving to first base, I believe is the kind of domino there. And so I don't know. I would be open to hearing what it would take to get Spencer Torkelson. He has not been a super impressive dude, but he's been a major league talent at minimum,
Sure.
So what would you guys think about that? That's a big name.
What concerns me on the Torkelson front is that, the Tigers publicly announced that they are going to tax the Twins or any other AL Central team more than other teams. Like during the Flaherty discussions and the trade deadline, we don't even know if the Twins had money, but I know Dan Hayes reported that the Tigers wanted Emmanuel Rodriguez for Jack Flaherty or Brooks Lee. There was a huge in-division tax. So I'm concerned say that if the Sacramento A's wanted Torkelson, they could throw 3 prospects, but for Minnesota, they would be like, oh no, we need David Festa or something like that. They could just hike it up super high. They're like, oh, we actually need something very extreme or we're not going to give them to you. So I'm scared about that. So just based off that, I feel like Torkelson will go to like Sacramento or Pittsburgh or something like that. That's just my only concern on the Torque front, at least.
Yeah, I think another challenge with the trade market, and this kind of came up in the Cassis discussion, that they want a big league pitcher with these expanded playoffs now. It's how many teams are really actually selling? There's 5, maybe. Yeah. And everybody else, there's 5 teams really, really buying, 5 teams, that aren't going to be competitive. And then everybody else is trying to figure out how to address their own needs and improve their team. So they're in the hunt without getting too bad. And, I think the Twins are definitely in that scenario too. So it gets really tricky. I don't know that we're going to see your traditional, selling a prospect for an established guy. Maybe more of the trade market talks these days are hey, who's a big leaguer for a big leaguer? You have Torkelson that you're disappointed in. Who's a guy that kind of feels like an extra piece in your org who has kind of not lived up to expectations that you want to deal. So I don't think we fully appreciate that change in the game of the expanded playoffs and what that's done to these conversations.
Sure. I'm glad to be having them. Honestly, it's pretty fun. I think it adds a nice little wrinkle to it. Okay. Any other names spring to mind before we go to the next topic here? Going once.
Wanted to add, I know the Dodgers have a surplus of MLB ready catchers. They have, Diego Cartaya was just DFA'd. I know there was a piece on Twins Daily about him recently, but he would maybe be interesting. They have Dalton Rushing, who is much more you have to actually spend a decent amount to get him. And then they have Hunter Fiducia too, who I wrote about recently. So they have 3 MLB caliber catchers. So if you trade Vasquez, it wouldn't be to Los Angeles because they have Barnes and Will Smith. But if you were we want a long-term catching option, maybe Cartaya or Rushing or Fiducia would be interesting on that front.
2 thoughts. I thought you were going to say the Twins should offer Chris Paddack for Will Smith. That would be a lot of fun. I would be all in on that. Second thought on that is, you know what? Let's pass on it. Let's keep going. Greg, did you have something to add to that?
Oh, I just wanted to say, not necessarily names that I'm looking at, but the Twins have way too many high minors pitching prospects right now. They've got to get rid of some of them over the offseason. I'm just going to say it. There's no way that they can find playing time for all of those guys. We've got to figure out which one of those are going to get traded. They've got to trade somebody this offseason, right?
Kind of, and I think that would blow so many Twins fans' minds to hear someone say that the Twins have too many pitching prospects in the high minors. That's such a strange concept to try to have that soak in. I also think just the big league rotation is a little bit better than a lot of Twins fans give it credit for, as is. So, and like I said, with the roster staying the same, there's not guys, Bailey Ober's not going to be a free agent, but within the next couple of years, Joe Ryan's going to be around a while. Pablo's going to be around a while. It's not like you have to hoard all those prospects because you're expecting these. And of course, injuries are going to create a lot of opportunities. We saw a guy coming from A-ball to the big leagues last year. So we know how opportunities can open up for these guys. But they definitely are in a really nice situation to deal some guys, especially from that draft class that has Connor Prelip and Matthews and Morris and all those, CJ Culpepper, Corey Lewis. all from the same draft class. So you're going to end up having a lot of the same, decisions to make. And yeah, I think they do need to kind of look at that class of guys and say, maybe it's not even necessarily pick the guy that they don't believe in, but say, got the Reds just are obsessed with this guy. And they'll
be the Reds. It
right?
would be.
There's a reason why that was the first team that popped into my mind. But yeah, like the Reds are obsessed with CJ Culpepper. We love CJ Culpepper, but these guys are obsessed with him. We're going to move him. Definitely could see that happen this offseason.
If
they don't, there's no room for Randy Dobnak in the Saints rotation if they don't make some trades. So,
that's a good point.
I mean, that's the who's going to go in and tell Randy Dobnak he doesn't have a job anymore? I mean, you've got to move somebody.
Not me. I ain't telling that to Randy. What I'm hearing is the Derek Falvey pitching pipeline it's too overpowering. Finally, as the prophecy foretold, right?
Finally, yeah, it's happening.
I
don't want to oversell it, but they do just have too many high minors pitching prospects that people like, and everybody has their favorite. It's not like one of those classes where it's like you've got some like elite high end name other than Connor Prelip if he actually exists. But everybody's got like their favorite of that group of like 7 dudes. Like eventually, some of them are going to break through, and that's awesome, and that's where you want to have your system at.
You know what? This has really reinvigorated my interest in this dead winter. I thought there was just so little action here, but really there's plenty to talk about. Speaking about plenty to talk about, let's boogie on over to our next segment, which is everybody's favorite. It's Gregory's Gripes.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Here we go.
Okay, party animals, you know the drill. Greg always has something that's on his mind and grinding his gears. This is his chance to get it off his chest. Greg, the floor is yours.
As time has gone on during this episode, I've actually evolved into 3 gripes. So we'll buckle up real quick. The first one is one that Lou decided that he's not going to do, but I want to do. I don't know why. It stings so bad to get a laughing emoji reaction on Twitter, or not on Twitter, on Facebook, when Twins Daily puts up your hard work, and for some reason there's like 10 people who respond with the laughing emoji, and it's like, no, I was working hard on that. I was serious. And sometimes it's like some of the most innocuous stuff where it's just like, oh, this guy looks like a decent prospect. Keep an eye on him. And there's 7 people laughing at it. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. This is destroying me inside. Which
you absolute creatures. Every time you laugh emoji at one of my pieces on Twins Daily, I lose a day of my life. I hope you know that.
The Twins Daily Facebook comment section is one of the craziest things I've ever witnessed.
Isn't that every Facebook comment section?
Yeah.
No, I avoid it. I haven't had Facebook since like 2017, but like I will sometimes go look at the Twins Daily stuff because I want to see what people say about like pieces, and I'm like, that's a lot.
My favorite is the people who clearly don't open the articles. They're just they see the headline and throw a reaction out there. And for somebody who writes a decent amount of parody and satire pieces, I've hooked a lot of people that think it's real, and that regains those days that I lost from the laugh emoji.
No, I had this idea actually when you pointed it out a few months ago now, for like a just for fun title. It's like confused Twins fan accidentally replies with laugh emoji to obituary or something like that. Like when it's pointed out, the fan is like, well, nothing will change until ownership changes. Yeah. And then when pressed further, it's something like, Well, you see, Tom Kelly coached fundamentals, and if Tom Kelly would have coached in fundamentals, nothing of this would have happened. We didn't have obituaries back in 1987 when Kirby Puckett was roaming center field, something along those lines. I have not figured out the right way to write that article, but it's been kicking around in my head for a while.
You'll get there.
Second gripe. I'm concerned that I might have griped about this before, but you should be, when you're turning a vehicle, you should turn into the near lane. Yes, we've all been to driver's ed, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're turning right, you should turn into the right lane, and if you're turning left, you should turn into the left lane. You should be able to, if there's a 2-lane road, you should be able to turn left and turn right at the same exact time because you're not cutting each other off. Yeah, because if the right person turns into the right lane and the left person turns into the left lane, then, but that's not how it works. And that grinds my gears so much. And I almost got run off the road like last week about it. So that's another gripe. Third gripe, I think that we've kind of poked at it a little bit, but I get like that the end of last season was really bad. I get it. It's broken Twins fans' brains. If you don't like, if you're not excited about this team, I can't fault you for that. If you don't see them as World Series contenders, I can't fault you for that because I really don't see them as like bona fide World Series contenders. But they finished with like a slightly above 500 record. They're returning basically everyone. Like their only big loss is Carlos Santana. I can't read any more comments about how this team is barely better than the White Sox. I can't read any more comments saying like this team is going to be competing for the number one over. Like if they just run it back, if they are the team that they were last season, they're going to be a 500-ish team. Like that is not the worst team in the league. If they just run it back with the guys that they have, it's not going to be a great team. But we don't need to like pretend like it's going to be the worst Twins team of all time. Even in the last decade, there have been 3 Twins teams that have been significantly worse than whatever this team is going to be this year. We do not have to do that. That's my third gripe.
Wow. We just got hit with the prestigious triple gripe.
Yeah, that concept of like the Twins fans, it's hard. It goes both ways because there's no doubt about it. Like going through an off season like this is awful. Like just knowing, and there's a lot of teams that are kind of stuck right now. Like the Cardinals are trying to move Arenado, and they're kind of stuck until they do that. I've had a bunch. I don't even know how many Toronto followers I've had, but I've had a bunch of Blue Jays fans crying at me about how they can't get anybody to go to Toronto. So there's multiple teams that are kind of stuck right now and waiting for some things to happen, but it's horrible. It's horrible to sit here and into January and not have any signings and look at anybody in the free agent market and be like, well, they're not going to pay that guy. We can't look at Pete Alonso and be like, oh, well, why don't the Twins just sign him? Well, obviously they're not going to, but what you just said is absolutely true. And I kind of tried to work through some of those feelings in one of the zines I worked on this off season, in a piece titled
ads.
"Why do we do this to ourselves?" Yeah, you could hit that skip ad button if you've got that right now.
This is less than free. I've actually paid Tom already for his zine. So,
Nice. Good.
So it's this weird thing where I feel like I'm going crazy with this offseason myself, and having it happen 2 years in a row is really hard to deal with. But then I absolutely am on that gripe too, that when you look at the team, and then there is the context of the division, which I know a lot of people hate saying that because, they want the World Series aspirations. And it's like, let's take baby steps here, guys.
Yeah.
The division is on the table. I mean, I wouldn't call the Twins favorites at that point, but if they can address some of their minimal needs, they could easily be the favorite in the division, depending on what the rest of the teams do. There's a thing where it's really easy to be dissatisfied as a Twins fan. But then also at the same time, if you sort of push that out of the way and look at the bigger picture, there's a lot to like there. And, sounds like maybe the one thing that people want to see most, the ownership change, is potentially right around the corner here. So we'll see if that kind of changes everybody's tune.
Yeah, I wonder how much just like instant excitement or instant, optimism that would bring to the club. Because in my head, I'm like, probably a lot. But then again, never underestimate how pessimistic Twins fans can be, no matter what. So,
can I add
especially after the Vikings lose this Monday?
Ooh.
I want to add one point that I think actually like is relevant here. So I know there's one specific popular sports program in Minnesota that spreads this a lot, but I mean sports like radio station, if you want to call them that, where there's this idea where Minnesota fans are just willing to accept mediocrity, and as long as we're like a 500 team and like, oh, we're in it, like fans are going to be okay with that. And then there's this kind of this notion where we need to reject that idea, and that Minnesota fans need to, strive and push for, being exceptional. And if they're not, then they're not good fans. I think you guys know who I'm talking about when I say there's a specific station who's really, reject mediocrity and do whatever you can to be exceptional. And I feel like that idea, it's with all four teams, but I feel like Twins fans, especially with like ownership on top of it, just with like being like in a state of like limbo, it's like, oh, we're just going to accept more mediocrity. We're not going to hold anybody accountable. We're just going to let we're just going to be an 83 win team, and we're going to maybe hunt for the AL Central and then get beat by the Yankees in the wild card round. Or so it's like that kind of just like toxic mentality. I feel like just like whatever grounds, like it's like the breeding grounds like are so strong with it right now. Like that can just flourish right now because there's so much negativity, and like that attitude can just have so much like power at this very moment, which is just discouraging. And I think a new ownership would definitely change that tone, or at least I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, here's hoping, right? I mean, it would be exciting to see when what was it, in mid-October, when we heard that the Pohlad family would explore a trade or explore a sale of the club. We were like, okay, that's really cool. Optimistically, maybe by 4th of July, or you know what I mean? Like midway through the season, we were kind of thinking, it's going to be a slow process. Now it just feels like, the last month or so, it just kind of kicked it into high gear. And no matter what, I don't see that really changing their off-season plans, unfortunately, too much. But nevertheless, we'll take some change where we can get some. Greg, anything else before we end your gripe session?
No, I mean, I will say, kind of following up on what Cody said, it is really frustrating. There's no more frustrating place to be as a fan base than watching a 500 team. And I mean, even in 2023, they broke the streak and everything. They were not that far over 500 for the season. The year before, they were in it until the end, and then they lost, whatever. The year before, they were pretty bad. The year before that was the COVID season. Like, it has been kind of a spinning your wheels stage with this franchise, and it's been like that. And there is no signs of that clearing up for next year, unless the new ownership flies in in the next month, maybe, which is not going to happen. I would assume. I know that Dan Hayes had that report saying that it's possible that there is a new ownership by opening day. I don't know exactly what that entails, whether that's like they've announced a sale or the whole business has been made over. I have no idea. I don't study that sort of stuff. I have no idea what sort of timeline that actually entails. But yeah, it is like, to fans, to fans' credit, I can't think of what the right phrase is, but it has been actually a very frustrating stretch of time for Twins fans, because when you're just in the middle of the league, you care just enough, like you get your hopes up just enough, but also you don't get, there really isn't much of a payoff. You make the playoffs, and that's awesome. But also, you might lose in the second round pretty quickly, or you might fight all year and then just not get a playoff spot, which happened 2 of the last 3 years. And so, like, I get the fans' angst about that. But yeah, there is just like I don't know. I got into it with a few people this week about just how uniquely frustrating it is to deal with Minnesota sports fans who are like somehow endlessly optimistic and believe that everything counts, everything matters, but also like it was never going to happen anyway. There's no reason to get my hopes up ever. Remember Gary Anderson in 1998 or whatever, like wheeling that out before the playoffs even start. Like, I don't know why I care about this team because some things happened in the 90s. I mean, that was 3 decades ago. So yeah, I totally get that. I guess I will close by saying I am out on the Pohlad family.
There you go. You know what? Just real quick before we move on, you talk about the angst that Twins fans have felt maybe for the last few years. Please know that there's like 26 other teams that feel that same way. If you didn't just win the World Series or are not in like an incredible run, chances are a good chunk of your fan base feels that angst too. So keep that in mind. But Greg, thank you for your triple gripe. It was great as always. But for right now, we are going to boogie on down to the closer. Okay, everybody, we are back on the hot seat. So in hot seat, I give each of our contestants here a hypothetical, a assigned hypothetical, and they have to give us their response of how they would deal with this situation. And if the rest of the panel deems them worthy, they will get to keep their jobs. So that is what we are all hoping for. Let's go with Cody first. Cody, you are the first one on the hot seat here. Cody.
Oh, Cody, sorry. Do you have a good record of winning on this show? Like, how was your picks to click last season?
Should we check the scoreboard?
Yeah, let's check the scoreboard. I want to know. Cody was pretty good at that. He's pretty good at winning these games that we play, right?
Yeah. Hang on, I'm scrolling. I'm looking for his name. Scrolling.
I do got at least
almost
one.
To the bottom.
At least one.
It says here 0 wins for Cody. That ends today. His streak starts now. Cody,
why are you lying to me?
Cody,
it's called gaslighting.
Oh, okay.
Guys, we're playing hot seat, please. Okay.
I'm sorry,
Cody. I'm joking. Cody, you are Derek Falvey. Good gig. The Pobabo, as many are calling him.
Yeah.
Another team offers to take the entire contracts of both Christian Vasquez and Chris Paddack, but you have to give up 2 of these 3 prospects in exchange. Luke Keeschel, David Festa, and Zebby Matthews. How do you respond to this? If you do agree to their terms, which 2 are you trading? Luke Keeschel, David Festa, Zebby Matthews for the entirety of Christian Vasquez's contract and Chris Paddack's.
Yeah, I would say no. I don't think long-term ramifications. I don't think it's worth mortgaging the future that much just to get short-term relief for this year. So you could maybe sign Mark Hanna or Austin Hayes or somebody like that. I don't think parting ways with valuable prospects like that is worth it in the long run. I mean, as we know, like baseball teams and Pobabos, right? So, they need to think about the short term, the medium term, and the long term. Keeschel, Festa, Matthews are all they're all short, medium, and long-term pieces for this team that can contribute at the major league level, I feel. I mean, Keeshel's a little bit out, but like Matthews and Festa for sure can contribute immediately. So I feel like, even though it would be nice to clear the books or to have some relatively clean books to where you have like $7 million to spend, like I wouldn't part ways with 2 of those 3 guys so you could maybe get a platoon left fielder. Like, I just don't think it's worth it. So no, I would hold on to those guys and risk, just not being able to get anybody because you struggled so hard to get rid of Paddack or Vasquez's contract.
Got it. Okay, so you wouldn't do 2 of those prospects. Would you do just 1?
No, I would hold on to all 3, honestly.
No. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Tom, what do you think of Cody's response there?
Oh yeah, totally agree.
Yep.
And Chris Paddack and Christian Vasquez are only an issue because the Twins are in the payroll situation they are. Yeah. You wouldn't want to pay those guys Vasquez. You wouldn't want to pay Vasquez as much as you're paying him. the Paddack salary is actually looking more and more palatable as time goes on and some of these numbers come out. I have some optimism that in year 2 past Tommy John or whatever, that maybe there's sort of a different Chris Paddack we're going to see. And he could be kind of an interesting, start him out in the rotation. And then if things don't break right, or if a prospect really jumps out, we've seen that dude can throw in the bullpen. So he's kind of an interesting piece. I think if he ends up staying, I'm not going to be like bummed out that either of those guys really, because the catching situation is probably going to be better with Vasquez than whoever else they're going to target, or however else they're going to spend that money. So I wouldn't go too far out of my way to attach prospects to open up that spending.
Fair enough. Greg, what do you think of Cody's response?
Yeah, I mean, I get it, because you guys are all dirty, rotten, grubby prospect hoarders. Me personally, I would trade the entire farm to get rid of those contracts. We've just established, just 20 minutes ago, there's too many gall-darned pitching prospects in this organization. We've got to get rid of them somehow. But
Why
I think
they trade Aaron Hicks for Cliff Lee.
I probably wouldn't do a trade, the second version where it was just one of the three. I probably also wouldn't do that. Though I will say, with what Tom's saying about Chris Paddack, it's been this creeping, I'm an eternal pessimist, as you guys might know, but people are kind of looking at Chris Paddack, kind of in a Michael Lorenzen bucket. I believe Matt Trueblood just wrote that exact thing up, but somewhere around there, a $8-ish million contract makes sense for him as a back of the rotation arm. He's got some injury issues. Maybe he's a swingman. You can move him to the bullpen. There's a voice in my head though, that's been saying what if Chris Paddack actually just has a full healthy season this year? The Twins, or whoever he's pitching for, doesn't leave him out to dry randomly in random May starts again. There is a legitimate shot that Chris Paddack gets traded as an essential salary dump, and he spends the year as a mid-rotation starter. And I was higher on Chris Paddack than I was on Joe Ryan last offseason, and that might just be me being cuckoo. But there is that creeping voice that's what if that happens and we have to watch that, and then he gets added to the list of names Akil Baddoo and whatever about how could Derek Falvey ever trade this guy away? We all loved him. I can't believe this happened type of thing. That voice has been getting louder and louder as the offseason has gone on.
It could happen. My fun fact, it's meaningless because only one guy can do so much, but it is a fun fact. The Twins were 11-6 in games that Chris Paddack started last year. And this was with him sort of being up and down and inconsistent, and his overall numbers don't look that great. This is a starting pitcher, and every time he went out there, you guys were 11-6 in games that he started. So it's not like this was some kind of disaster season that he's coming off of.
Weren't they under 500 with Sonny Gray in 2023?
Yes. Yes. Isn't that baseball makes no sense? It's the best ever. I love it.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is extend Chris Paddack coming from Cody's mouth. And think
about all the team control.
Yeah, think about it. But it sounds like we're all in agreement. Cody Falvey gets to keep his job. So congrats, Cody. Great job. Point for you.
Well, I'm actually transitioning jobs right now. I'm actually going to be the president, but I'm still the Pobo. Oh, that's why I'm the Pobabo. That's right. Okay, that makes sense.
You're the Po boy. You're the Po boy.
Po body.
Po body. All right, Tom, you are next, my friend. You are on the hot seat now. Tom, you're Justin Ishbia, and you just purchased the Twins for $1.9 billion. What is the first move you do to try to stir fan interest as the new owner? This can be, something on the field. This can be something in the ballpark experience. What do you do to say, hey, I'm not the Polads. This is different?
Well, since we've already signed Roki Sasaki in this scenario, I am signing him to a 10-year extension.
Oh,
he's going to be a Minnesota staple. It's going to be synonymous. People think of Minnesota, people are going to think of Roki Sasaki. That's how it's going to work.
There we go.
So that's the biggest thing. But really, Twins fans want to see some kind of a investment, some kind of a show that ownership cares. I don't know how they're going to be able to do that given the timing of what it sounds like. There's no chance they're going to be able to come in and impact an off season, unfortunately. So we're not going to be able to see that before the season starts if things happen this quickly. So like, I would love to see them do some of the things they've done in Phoenix to where like they've really been passionate about getting the games for they co-own the Suns, the Ishbia brothers. They've been passionate about getting the Suns games easier to watch and getting concession prices down. I think that's a huge, huge issue with the Twins right now. We've talked about Twins fans being kind of down. I think if you can make the games more affordable, if you can make concessions more affordable and get people in the ballpark and show them a good time, that is going to create a lot of goodwill early on for whoever the next new owner is. It's not as if the Twins ticket prices are out of control. Baseball is generally more affordable than other sports and other entertainment options. And as we know, everything is getting more expensive these days. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a huge goodwill showing that someone coming in, hands tied in terms of off-season movement, just say, hey, we want you guys to come in and see our team and see how we do business and win you back over. Come to the ballpark. We'll show you a good time. The best is yet to come, but we want you back on board.
Yeah, no, that's a really good answer. Adding on to that, I think I've been saying for years, whether it's the Ishbias, the Pohlads, any owners for any team, I think that kids should get into the game for free with a paying adult, even if it's just 1-on-1. You have a family of 4, 2 parents, 2 kids. That makes a ton of difference, just getting them in the ballpark, whether they love baseball at that point or not. They could be going for the food. I know I was most interested in the food when I was a little kid, and it fostered an absolute love for baseball and the experience, the ballpark experience. And I think that's what's been lacking, at least from the Twins, for the last however many years. So I really appreciate that answer from Tom. What do we think, Greg? What do you think of his response?
I mean, can you imagine like the stories that are written, I don't know, 20 years later, if everybody hasn't soured on the new owners, if this is the Ishbia brothers, whatever, the story, like Justin Ishbia, the man who brought baseball back to Minnesota, obviously it's not that extreme, but to an extent, like there are huge swaths of Twins territory who can't access the games, whatever. If he can throw his name onto like, I was the guy who did it, like even if that's already going to happen, if he can throw his name onto, yes, I'm personally doing it. And, the MLB is saying you have to pay $100. Well, guess what, buddy? I'm going to pay every fan's subscription $100 for the first year or whatever. Like that would be something.
Yeah.
Obviously, his hands are going to be tied. There's only so much you can do. Yeah. There has been a little nugget in my head. I've got a lot of nuggets in my head. But like, what if, we get to the trade deadline and they have a new owner and he just says like super, like this will ingratiate him to fans. Just say, here's $15-20 million. Just go do something. Go, like, I'm going to set it on fire if you don't spend it. Go and make some sort of addition that you weren't able to make these last few years.
I mean, how fun was it? I know that not every owner can be Steve Cohen of the New York Mets, but like a year after he bought the team, he was, maybe even less than that, he was tweeting out, he said, hey, Mets fans, who do you think we should go get in free agency? If anything, that just stirs up interest and conversation and puts a little bit of faith in the ownership there, a little bit of goodwill. And clearly he's the cream of the crop right now when it comes to ownership, it feels like, at least in Major League Baseball. Okay, so Greg, sounds like you're giving Tom a thumbs up. Cody, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, thumbs up to both. I mean, to Tom and Greg. I think,
Thanks.
Great ideas. Trying to think. I mean, my mind too initially went to the trade deadline. It's like, okay, well, obviously they're not going to be, they're not going to set a hard limit like the poll has. What if they go trade for like Zach Gallen and then like extend him? Something huge like that. Like, wouldn't like that be like incredible? Like that would be instant change of the tides. Like oh, we're cooking with fire now because like. I mean, the Suns, they traded for Durant and Bradley Beal. It's kind of backfired. I mean, they're not very good, but that's not the point. I mean, the point is that, like, they went, they purchased the Suns and they went for these huge moves and they were like, we're going to spend the money. We're going to get 2 of the best guys in basketball. So, like, that's I think, like, that is what could do it. It's just increasing the payroll, getting star players. Like, I said Zach Gallen, but, like, any other like even position players. I can't think of people off the top of my head right now, but I just think really
Aaron Judge,
Shohei Ohtani.
Here we go.
Bryce Harper. I think, yeah. So, I mean, I'm trying to think of like community outreach too.
Yeah.
I don't live in Minneapolis or St. Paul, obviously, but like I'm in Milwaukee, and the Brewers are super ingrained like in the city and just like the area. Like people love the Brewers. Like every game is sold out. And like one thing I've noticed to separate that from Minnesota is that like Twins games are often not sold out, even in the summer. It's like there's sparse people there. It's like, and I don't even know how much of that has to do with ownership to an extent. I just feel like maybe they're functionally just like different areas, like from Milwaukee compared to Minnesota. It's like apples to oranges potentially, but I feel like Minnesota has.
What is there to do in Milwaukee?
There's a really nice Lake Michigan. There's
Minnesota has about 10,000 more of those. So
that's some point. That's not what I'm trying to talk about right now. Oh my God.
Cody's burning himself on the hot seat, and it wasn't even his question here.
No, I mean, long story short, so I can stop talking. I don't even want to talk anymore. What was I going to say? I mean, like, I want games to get sold out. I want Minnesotans to be like Wisconsinites in that sense. And I don't know. Milwaukee's a nice city, Greg. I don't even want to talk to you anymore, man.
Go ahead, Tom.
I'm really encouraged that there is this robust market for the Twins. I think this is like a sleeping giant, and I think all these frustrated Twins fans, they still feel, at least they still are giving the crying emoji or whatever. And I think we're the state of hockey, of course. We're crazy about hockey. But the Wild get incredible support, but I don't think a lot of people realize how baseball crazy Minnesota is. We probably have more baseball players per capita than any other state, maybe other than California and Florida, because we have men's leagues, town ball, people playing all over the state. People love baseball, but yeah, there's just been this friction there. And it is a lot of it, I think, to sort of your more casual fan. It is pretty directly tied to the Pohlads and their kind of disinterest in kind of having fun with the Twins, running the team like a business, which most sports team owners do. The Ishbias and the NBA and the Cohens, they're kind of few and far between still. There are much cheaper owners than the Pohlads, believe it or not. A lot of Twins fans wouldn't believe that, but it definitely has caused a lot of friction. And I do think even if it's not the Ishbia brothers who have that reputation, that would like light the fan base on fire. If it was just some random rich dude who we don't know and he doesn't really have any background, just getting the baggage of the Pohlads off of our back is going to create a spark that I think is going to really fuel Gate and a lot more interest. And, the last point on this thread is that the Twins did respond. Attendance dropped huge. The Twins were so far below their projected attendance this past season because guess what? Minnesota sports fans will hold teams accountable if they're not delivering the goods. And maybe it's not necessarily in the standings always, but yeah, if you go out and you cut $30 million, you can expect a lot of fans to not show up the next year. And that's exactly what happened.
I want to say really quick too, last year, I mean, Minnesota rallied around the Wolves and like that team's still owned by Glenn Taylor. So there's like an interesting dichotomy. I know A-Rod and Laurie are transitioning, but like, it's still like, if the team was great, I think fans would show up regardless, but just like the mediocrity and the Pohlads, like that makes it a big concern. But I know, like deep down, Minnesota loves the Twins. Like everybody, everybody has this huge soft spot in their heart for it. It's just like the Pohlads. It just everything with that has just taken so much away. But I think fans can easily rebound and just find interest really quickly in a team again.
I don't want to use the word fair weather, but there is a little like Minnesota baseball fans. Like to quote a movie that I'm on record saying is a very bad movie and nobody should watch it because it sucks. Like if you build it, they will come. like if you put out like a product that is worth watching, Minnesota sports fans will show up for the Twins. If it's not worth watching, they won't. And if like, and I go back and forth with people on like, well, don't like just not go to baseball games because you're trying to prove a point. But also like if like the relationship you have like with the ownership is like something that ruins it for you, don't waste your money on it. Like, don't say like, I'm not going to go because I'm mad at the owner, so I'm going to deprive myself of baseball. Like, if you still want to go to the game, go to the game. But also, like, if you do have this negative cloud hanging around the team, maybe that's based on their play, maybe it's based on their ownership, maybe it's a mix of the two. Yeah, then don't show up. But yeah, if you build something people can get excited about, Minnesotans will pack that stadium. If you don't build something to get excited about, they will not show up. I don't want to say fair weather, but there is a little bit of that vibe as a non-Minnesotan.
I think what's always been the case with Minnesota fans is like they will show up for the Wild and Vikings no matter what. They will sell the stadium out. But the Wolves and the Twins need to be good for people to show up. I feel like is the case, at least in my experience.
Man, I can't believe Field of Dreams just keeps catching strays from our show here, man. Unbelievable. I feel like Kevin Costner's listening to this. He's like, what the? I have nothing to do with this. Anyway, we have one
worse than Draft Day. Worse Kevin Costner movie than Draft Day.
Okay. Well, okay, Mr. Wise Guy, you are now on the hot seat. It is your turn, dear. Mr. Greg Masterson. You're the Twins Daily head honcho, John Bonus. And you're looking for a way to spice up the Twins Daily Winter Meltdown. What would you add to the festivities this year to spark some interest?
Can you do this section in his voice? Can you talk like him?
No, I don't think about that. No. Well, at the home, you know what we like to do to get people excited is to play a little bit of bingo. What if we had a bingo night at Twins Daily Winter Meltdown? Oh, geez, I don't know. Let's see here. What would spice things up at the Meltdown? I don't know. Maybe if we brought real ball players back, maybe like Kent Herbeck or Kirby Puckett or Tim Laudner. If those were the guests instead of these newfangled hip kids like Louis Varland and Matt Wallner. You know, back in my day, baseball players used to show up at bars and punch people in the nose. We just don't do that anymore. Billy Martin punched a marshmallow salesman. I don't know if you've heard this before, yes. But we need to bring, back when men were men, those types of things. Sandy Koufax, I'll beat him up for what he did in '65. I'm just stalling here to try to think of what I would do to make the greatest event of all time better. I mean, what can you buy the man who has everything? What can you add to the event that has everything? What?
Here's the deal. Okay, while you think, I'll tap dance for you here for a second. What I was picturing is like a dunk tank for Gleeman and the Geek. And at some point, someone's going to chuck a ball, and Aaron Gleeman's going to fall into this pool. And I'm going to be honest, that fall would probably kill him, even if it's like 4 feet from the ground.
Is he getting back out of there?
I don't, it's a tough call. It's a tough call, but I think a dunk tank would be mighty fun. Cody, Tom, any ideas spring to mind for you before Gregory tries again?
Well, you know who my invited guest of honor would be. Roki Sasaki.
Oh, yes.
Well,
that would be good. That'd be good. We would need an interpreter, probably. I'm
not a problem. Not a problem.
Well, I don't know. John might speak a little Japanese.
Yeah, well-traveled man.
Yeah, no doubt. Cody, anything spring to mind?
To build off Greg's initial point, we could have Patrick Royce say something really offensive.
What? What?
We can't have that. All right. Well, hey, you know what? That's an idea. It would draw some headlines. That's for sure. Greg, anything come to your mind before we deliberate on your magnificent answer here?
I don't know. Ol Gregg face reveal.
Ooh.
Well, that happened last year.
Whoever shows up can see my face. That is my advertisement, I guess.
That is enticing.
You'll see my amazing new jersey that I have. It just landed in Chicago O'Hare, so it's making its way down to where I live. It is going to. I really hope it turns out well, but I'll spoil it for anybody who's listening at the hour and 10-minute mark. I've got a Twins, the City Connect jerseys, and
Your favorite.
yeah, I have, across the back in the name, it says Manny Magoo, and I worked with the producers, and they said that they were doing it. They never sent me an image of what it ended up looking like, so I'm really hoping it turns out well. But the number is 0-30.
Oh,
Man, I hope that thing makes it through customs.
So I guess that is what I would do to spice up the Winter Meltdown.
Greg, do you remember last year before the meltdown you tweeted like me and the boys marching to Target Field to hold the Twins accountable after the meltdown? We could actually do that this year.
Oh yeah, no, that would be awesome. Like we round up everybody at the meltdown. There's like a few hundred people there, and we march ourselves down to One Twins Way to teach them a lesson. You know,
I'm not super comfortable with this conversation on January 7th.
Yeah.
You know where my headspace is.
Well,
Can we give it a day, fellas? Can we give it a day?
Greg, I didn't have a lot of faith in your answer there, but you really pulled through with the face reveal tease. So I'm going to give that a thumbs up. Cody, Tom, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm big on the Greg face reveal. I'm a big advocate. I want it as soon as possible.
It looks quite different than it did last year, to be honest with you. Maybe I should show up to the Winter Meltdown with like different facial hair and haircut every single year. Maybe people won't recognize me.
Give Greg a free quesadilla again this year too.
There we go. All right, so Tom, what do you think? Thumbs up?
Yeah, I mean the Manny Magoo jersey really was winning me over. But I think actually they should do a contest where you have Greg and then like 5 other random dudes. And the contest is everybody in attendance has to try to guess which one is actually Greg.
That is fun.
Yeah,
that
I think that would be awesome.
I'm going to bring my dad. He's going to have this gray beard, and people are going to be like, I know it. I think I know.
Yeah, they'll be like a 21-year-old and like an 80-year-old. It'll be just like the entire range of possibilities.
The most different builds.
We've got one in every decade. Yes.
Yeah.
One guy's like 5'3", one guy's like 6'7".
Nice. That's great.
6'7" is kind of short, if you ask me.
You guys, this is a clean sweep. You all graduated from your hot seat. You get to keep your jobs. Congratulations. But you know what? I think 1 hour and 12 minutes is a pretty good length, and we probably need to be bidding adieu so that we can get to this Roki Sasaki signing with the Twins news that's going to break any minute here. Anything you guys want to plug real quick before we wrap the show up?
I want to say really quick. So 1 hour, 12 minutes. That's like 2 hours less than last time, right, Tom?
I warned you guys. If you guys get me on here, we're gonna push records.
I was on the 7-day COVID IL the last time Tom was on our show, and I'm pretty sure that episode wrapped up like yesterday.
I've got at least 45 minutes Mike Ford in me ready to go. Just throwing that out there.
Good to know. Save it for next.
I'm glad we're not getting to the walk-off question because I already forgot what it was. So,
ooh, okay, real quick. Local billionaire that you think should buy the Twins. I'm going Sweet Martha.
Classic.
I gotta go Betty from Betty's Pies.
Betty's Pies.
Yeah,
very interesting.
Up in Two Harbors there. They're pumping out the pies. If you could get a Betty, I mean that ties into the bringing the fans back. Betty buys the Twins, and then you can get Betty's Pies at Target Field. Like
sold.
Yeah, problem solved.
Awesome. Cody, anybody?
I was gonna do a whole bit, but I don't really feel like it anymore. I know my dad's a small business owner in Rochester. He owns Showman Boat Works. He could get enough people to maybe get some money. So I'm gonna say my dad.
Nobody's listening anymore, Cody. You can do a bit.
Okay. All right. So you guys know there was a election recently, right?
Yeah.
I missed that.
Okay, so the Republican nominee one, I forgot his name. But the Democratic nominee was Tim Walz. He was the vice president nominee, and Kamala Harris. So during their campaigning, they netted over $1 billion in fundraising funds. That's a lot of money. And, notably, they lost the election. Tim Walz is the governor of Minnesota. He has local ties. Should Tim Walz and Kamala Harris buy the Twins?
Question mark? That's
okay, Comrade Cody.
Comrade Cody.
Man doesn't own a house. How is he gonna own a stadium?
All right. Well, Greg, what do you got?
I'm not very well versed on Minnesota billionaires. All I know of is the My Pillow guy, who I've learned is different than the guy who's on the billboards with his arms outstretched. I don't know, guys. This is
right
Lindell versus Lindahl.
This is not my area of expertise. I apologize. As a man who was born in Minnesota and then just never lived there, that's a real fact. I was born in Minnesota and I've never lived in Minnesota.
And you'll die here, I promise.
Yeah, I'm gonna have the Twins be my pallbearers so they can let me down one last time.
That's good. I think
Mike Lindell has taught me many things. None of them were true.
All right, I think that's a perfect way to end this show.
Is that the pillow guy or the billboard guy?
That's the pillow guy.
Oh, good
right.
old purple pillow man.
Speaking of pillows, it is late. I'm going to wrap up this party, but I want to thank Tom for joining us, and Greg and Cody, as always, thank you for your stupendous work. On behalf of the Twins Off Daily podcast, thank you so much for listening. Please give us a follow if you haven't already, and please tell your friends. We'd love to invite more people to this party. But in the meantime, thank you for listening, everybody, and stay sweet.